Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show. Check out some of my past interviews. We've got some great interviews with smart CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies and organizations like Netflix, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree. I'm also the co-founder of Rise25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects using podcasts and content marketing. And this is part of our Global Leadership Conference series. The Global Leadership Conference, or GLC as it's known, is a conference for emerging business leaders. It's put on by the Entrepreneurial organization each year. I'm a member of EO, and I will be attending this year's event. And I created this series to highlight some of the people who've been to the conference before and who could share what it's like. This year, GLC is both in-person and virtual. It's in-person in Washington, D.C., and also in Barcelona, Spain, April 23rd to 26th, 2022. It's also virtual, and it's open to all EO members worldwide. So you can go to eonetwork.org to learn more about that. And my guest here today is Shortt. He is an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and facilitator. And you may guess from his brogue, he's also from Ireland, such a wonderful country, which I was so fortunate to study at Trinity during law school. And he's president of EO Ireland. And we're going to talk a bit about his background, his journey through entrepreneurship. Steve, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. And first of all, you were born into an entrepreneurial family. Your parents had started a couple of different businesses, which you ended up taking over, ended up buying from them. What was it like growing up in an entrepreneurial family?
It had its challenges, it had its moments. I think one of the things that I learned early on as a child was that I was not going to be good at working for anybody else. Just whatever way that my genes were built, that it wasn't going to sit well with me to be told what to do by other people. So I actually started my first entrepreneurial um, event or project, I guess, in third class in primary school. So that's about 8 or 9 years of age.
Hmm.
So
And what was it?
I draw. So I draw. I do comic. I did comics, and I drew comic books and comics, like 4 or 5 page comics, because we had the home office. We had this huge photocopier at home, so I was able to do my drawings, photocopy the comics
Nice.
into like A3, fold them over, and have it look all professional. And I
Leveraging
used to sell them
technology at a
for
young age. I love that. That's great.
so I used to sell the comics for about the equivalent of, let's say, 5 cent for each comic.
Uh,
Probably cost my parents 25 to 30 cents for me to photocopy all these things. But I made a bit of money. I did some. I was creative. I was able to scratch that itch, and thankfully, I've learned a bit more about economics as I've gone on my entrepreneurial journey.
That's great. That's great. And so, you observed your parents. Do you think that there was a point where you realized that you wanted to go and be an entrepreneur yourself and run a business? Or was it something
Yeah,
that
I mean,
just, go ahead.
so growing up, it would have been really unusual in Ireland. I mean, it would be you would get a good, safe job, either working, because the economy in Ireland in the 80s was pretty awful. So you would try and find a good, safe job and rise up through the ranks of corporate management. So from my parents, I think growing up in school, there was probably only about 2 or 3 people whose parents were kind of business owners or business leaders, and the others might have been like a bank manager or a manager in an American company or something like that. So for us to have our own business, which wasn't a pub, which is very common in Ireland, or a shop or a retail of something like that, for us to have something else was a bit unusual. But I definitely saw the benefits. I grew up with the ethos of, well, it's our family business, so weekends don't matter. 5 o'clock is just another hour that you can be working
Mhm.
to make sure that the stuff gets done. And I know, working in different family business, when we grew it and we were more international, one of the things that our international clients liked working with family businesses is if something goes wrong in the middle of the night with a client who's in the country doing a training course or something like that, one of us is going to get up out of bed and go fix that problem, as opposed to having to ring somebody in Japan to get the all clear from somebody in New York before they can say, "I'm sorry."
Yeah. Now, there were two separate businesses. Alpha College was one, and ETC Consult, which you still own and run. One, Alpha College was teaching English as a foreign language, and you had students coming from all around the globe to learn in Dublin. And the other one, ETC Consult, kind of explain what you do through that.
So ETC Consult is the older business of the two. So I bought both businesses and I sold Alpha College after it being around for about 30 years. So I sold having that conversation with your parents to sell the third child. That's a deep conversation to have, but it was
Yeah.
necessary. But ETC Consult is we specialize in psychometric assessments. So we do, on the one hand, we do career guidance and interview skills for individuals and people who want to either get a clear understanding of what's going to fulfill them in life or how to go about getting into those roles. And then for companies, we also do uh, psychometric selection where we do competency based interviews or we do personality profiling or aptitude profiling to make sure that you're actually getting the right person for the right job because traditional interviews are notoriously not great at picking the right person.
Right. And your timing was impeccable on the sale of Alpha College. So you had to get over convincing your parents to actually sell it. But when did you sell it?
So we saw like it was a long process. It's a whole different podcast on the ups and downs of due diligence. But my last day in the language travel industry was the 6th of December 2019, which was a Friday. And I believe that that was the day that the officials in Wuhan announced that COVID-19 was a thing. So obviously, English language industry, 100% reliant on international travel and people being able to come to Ireland. So as COVID was starting to bite, I was called lots of things from an evil genius to stuff that's far less complimentary by friends and former colleagues.
That's funny. And let's pivot to your involvement with EO Entrepreneurs Organization and the Global Leadership Conference, which you've attended for a number of years. First of all, you were one of the founding members who brought EO to Ireland. How did you come to discover EO and why did you decide that you wanted to start a chapter in Ireland?
So I was probably one of the only people in the founding group of EO members that didn't know the other business leaders in Ireland because my with most of my time being spent in international education, most of my connections were all international. I didn't have a big network of Irish contacts because I didn't do any business in Ireland. So I actually came in through a very, very dear friend of mine in Vancouver who's in the industry as well, who has an English language school in Vancouver. She told me about it at an event, and I started researching it, and they were just about to launch a chapter in Ireland. I reached out, and as it turns out, the the staff member who was in charge of EO Europe new chapter launches was a girl I was in school with. So I was able to sit down and met her for lunch. She talked me through a lot of stuff, and it just really sounded uh, like something I wanted to be involved in. I remember the Boston chapter came over for their chapter retreat to Ireland, and that was kind of the launch of EO Ireland. And we were sister chapters for a while and all the rest. And I remember my wife and I at this dinner. I didn't know any of the Irish people. We were chatting to some of the Americans, and my wife turned around to me after about half an hour at this reception and said, "You need to join these people. These are your freaks. Like these talk the same way you talk. You have to join this group."
That's great.
So
And you help to join it, and then you go to Global Leadership Conference in Athens in 2014. That was your first year attending the conference,
yeah.
and you've been ever since.
So I've been really fortunate enough to have been at every GLC since that, and I won't say I've stepped up into roles specifically to get access to it, but I won't say I didn't either. Obviously, I really enjoyed the roles that I took, but going to GLC is one of those highlights every year that you get such an immense amount of energy, inspirations, connections, friendships, and the access to some of the speakers and the learning that goes on at GLC is just unparalleled. I mean, my very first GLC in Athens, I was introduced to multipliers by Liz Wiseman. There was a presentation by her name just escapes me now. Hazel. She's based in Dubai, and she basically does the facilitation for all of the multipliers workshops in the MEPA region in Europe and Middle East, Pakistan, Africa. And it was just one of those moments of understanding this content that I'd never come across before. And I thought this was absolutely brilliant and a mindset change for me in how I held myself in business, surrounded by all of these people around the world who think and have think like me and have the same issues that I have and have the same, well, maybe not, issues, maybe not the right word, but have the same problems, have the same thoughts, have the same things that they have to deal with. And then having a conversation about how you can put that into practice and really coming home and understanding how I can make those changes. That was really one of those pivotal moments for me in my entrepreneurial world, and that was at GLC, my very first GLC, and I've been to every one since.
And you've been some of the other cities you've been to, San Diego, Macau, I think was in 2019. What are some of the other highlights from some of the other ones you attended?
So I've been to San Diego. So one of the things that is a bit of always a juggle for me is it's my daughter's birthday around the time that GLC is always on, and as an entrepreneur and as somebody who's very interested in family, I want to always make sure that I'm there for my daughter's and my wife's birthdays and big special events. And one of the luxuries of being an entrepreneur is you get to set your timetable to a certain extent, but the people in GLC just wouldn't listen to me that it was my daughter's birthday and it had to be moved by a week. Um, so I had breakfast with my daughter that day and then went a really convoluted way to get the latest flight that I could get out of Dublin to connect in London to go through Atlanta to go to San Diego or something like that. But even that, I mean, I remember being on anyone who's in San Francisco or San Diego will probably kill me, but there was a baseball stadium that we had this amazing event at. I have no idea what the baseball stadium was. As an Irishman,
Padres. Yeah.
Sorry?
The Padres, San Diego Padres. Yeah.
There we go. It was that one. And it was just an amazing feeling to be on what felt like hallowed ground, even though I didn't know any of the history or the backstory of it. But it felt amazing to be on the pitch with all these other entrepreneurs and talking about things and really understanding how people engage with each other. And if I remember correctly, there was a big boxing match that a couple of bars close to it were showing, and EO had some people had some reserved seats and things, and it was really like a real sense of camaraderie. Then Frankfurt, I've been in Toronto, I've been in Frankfurt, I've been in Macau, I've been in, am I missing one? San Diego and Athens. I think that's it. I think that's them all.
And almost out of time here, but what would you say to someone who's considering attending Global Leadership Conference?
I mean, as facile as it sounds, do it. If you haven't been to a GLC, if you haven't experienced it, just go. It might feel, oh, what am I going to get out of this? There's no direct correlation to this. You will, I almost guarantee you will meet that one person who will just have a different focus, or they'll say something, or a speaker will say something that will help you to change your trajectory and accelerate your growth as a leader and as a business owner.
This has been great, Stephen. And just to wrap things up, I know you have a book that's going to be coming out soon about running family businesses, how to run them without losing your family. So tell us all about that, and also where people can learn more about you and connect with you.
So yeah, I'm writing a book at the moment, and I have a keynote based around the same book. It's called "Build a Killer Family Business Without Killing Your Family." It's spun out of a course that I did through another EOer, Rich Mulholland in South Africa, on keynote speaking and presenting, and it was just an idea that I started to develop and run with. I've presented to a couple of EO chapters, and I was at GLCX last year presenting, which was just amazing. So yeah, if anybody's interested, successfulsuccession.com is that website, or stephenshortt.com is my website. You can get me there. Delighted to have a conversation with anybody about EO, about GLC, or if there's any way that I might be able to help.
Excellent, Stephen. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.